Okay, now that we've had a chance to introduce ourselves and talk about our writing challenges, I want to talk to you about the 3 foundations of effective writing. This is something I've come up with over the years, and it works whether you're writing emails, memos, white papers, anything you can think of, even when it comes to preparing how you're going to do a presentation. These are the 3 foundations, guidelines, if you will, for effective business writing. The first one, and this might not occur to everybody, but it's valid because it applies to all of us if we take it seriously. And that is the notion that writing is thinking. I'll give you an example of what I mean before I go any further in describing it. Imagine yourself in an office situation, a business situation. You're working for an employer and you would like to make a good impression, particularly with the boss. So maybe you're at the coffee room or the water cooler, and your superior walks up and asks you a question. You do your best to answer it in some detail to show how smart you are and hope you made a good impression. Invariably, after an encounter like that, when the boss walks away, you're going to think to yourself, I wish I'd said something else. I wish I'd added to that. I wish I hadn't said that. On the other hand, if the boss were to come up to you and say, I'd like to know about this and that, I'd like to have some answers, can you help me and send me an email by tomorrow? Then you've got time to think, and the thinking is everything. So the phrase to remember is that writing is thinking. It's an opportunity for you to look smart. There's a great old Chinese proverb. I see and I forget. I read and I remember. But I write and I understand. And many an author will tell you, whether they're writing journalism, which is what I've done for many decades, or writing fiction or poetry, the real thinking doesn't start until they start writing. Then they find out what they want. So writing is much more than a technical exercise in grammar. It's a chance for you to show how smart you are. And I want you to keep that in mind as we go through our exercise of today. It brings out the best in us. So please don't view it as a chore. Many people say, oh, I just don't know how to write. Well, if they really mean that, then it's their way of telling us they're not too bright. And good writers bring out the best in themselves. That's number 1. Writing is thinking. Number 2, when you write, what should be uppermost in your mind is who you're writing for. Who is the audience, the reader? Otherwise, there's no point in writing. You don't write for yourself. This is not an ego display. Who are you writing for? You're not out to impress anybody. If you're out to impress somebody, or along the way impress yourself, you're going to use big words and acronyms, long sentences to show how smart you are. Well, that doesn't work. What works is edifying, educating, explaining, putting yourself in the reader's shoes, giving the reader a chance to help you think through how you present this. And I'm not talking about dumbing down to anybody. I'm just talking about understanding your reader. When you can be, if you're an engineer, you can discuss things on a technical level with another engineer or write about things on a technical level. But if you're an engineer talking to a vendor who might not be technically qualified or a potential customer, you've got to think about what they know. If you write over their heads, you lose them. Another way to look at that, and I've done a lot of consulting and I work with consultants and I sometimes edit consultants' work to get it close to plain English, is that people who write without keeping the audience in mind often write to exclude. They don't mean to exclude, but that's what happens. They use big words, inside jargon, acronyms without explaining them, and what happens along the way is that you start to lose them. They're not impressed. They're bored, they're irritated, their eyes drift to the ceiling, they get tired, they wait for you to finish. But if you use language, whether you're speaking or writing, that includes, if you're including the reader, you've got them going with you. Whether it's speaking in a presentation or writing an email. Along the same lines, I want you to be aware of the fact that you should always flatter your readers by assuming that they're busy. We're all busy. We're all getting pummeled sometimes. It seems saturated with electronic messages. And the best thing you can do for your reader is flatter them to think to the point where you make it clear, you're busy, you don't have a lot of time, let me get to the point. Let me get to the point. Get to the bottom line up front, BLUF. I worked with some Navy SEALs a couple of years ago who were in between deployments doing some writing and testing new weapons down in Virginia Beach. And they had to write reports for their superiors at the Pentagon. And the Pentagon has somehow gotten to the point where they care about effective writing. It hasn't always been the case. So they come up with this acronym, BLUF, bottom line up front. Unfortunately, it stands for bluff too, but the important point is that you get to the point and then support it with some details. Don't make me read 4 or 5 paragraphs to try to understand what you want me to know. Give me a reason to keep reading. The third point is a matter of quality control. Quality control has been a part of our business language for decades. How does it apply to writing? It applies in the sense of editing yourself and revising yourself as needed. With the computer, and only people my age would understand, with the computer it's really easy. You're not using actual cut and paste like I used to do in a newspaper, in a newsroom, where you literally cut and paste to change, to correct, to update your copy, as we call it. In the world you inhabit, you can do it so quickly with just a tap of the fingers on the keyboard, you can move things around. But how do you do that? How do you clean yourself up? How do you exert quality control? Is spell check enough? Of course not. Spell check will be only a part of the process. Spell check, however, will not pick up the 3 ways of spelling Smith, 3 ways of spelling Johnson. Spell check doesn't know how people's names are spelled. Spell check doesn't know the difference between T-H-E-I-R, T-H-E-R-E, or T-H-E-Y'-R-E. It doesn't know the difference. Therefore, you've got to go over it with the eyeball. Don't count on spell check only. Why is this important? Well, first of all, it should be important because you take pride in what you do. That's your name at the bottom of the email. With the flight engineer, pilot, and co-pilot. Now we're down to pilot and co-pilot. And I don't care how automated modern cockpits get, in the foreseeable future, you'll never have less than 1 pilot. You need redundancy to monitor the systems. You need that backup. So what does that mean for you? What it means is that you have to be redundant on your own. You have to set it aside and come back with a critical eye, because no matter how skillful you are as a writer, if you don't check your work, revise it as needed, all that creativity and intelligence that went into the writing is gone. You're blowing your opportunity. Writing is thinking. Part of that thinking is being self-critical. That's very important. Now, in many situations, you can get a colleague to look at it. Writing doesn't have to be lonely. You can get a colleague to help you, but you still have to trust yourself as the final stop. So, to review, writing is thinking, audience comes first, quality control, edit, revise. And do you have any questions where we are now? I want to move into talking about the writing process, which starts with brainstorming, and we'll move right into that. Right from that into this is a 4-stage writing process, so that you can get used to being a writer and a thinker at the same time. From there, we'll go into exercises that are relevant to what you do for a living in this group, and we will, as part of that writing, those writing exercises, will be doing peer review. They'll be editing each other, helping each other learn through mistakes.